It is an awe-inspiring and terrifying sight, a volcano spewing lava and millions of tons of ash and rock into a creepy blackened sky. Mexico's infamous fire volcano, Mount Colima, has erupted once again, a fiery reminder of the sheer destructive force nature can unleash at any moment. But as dramatic as this eruption may seem, it's nothing compared to some of the little-known natural disasters that have been predicted. From supervolcanoes primed to darken the skies for years to towering mega-tsunamis capable of swallowing entire coastlines, these 15 catastrophic natural disasters aren't just worst-case scenarios. They're real threats that could strike sooner than you think. Number 15. Indonesia's forgotten supervolcano. The Yellowstone supervolcano gets all the attention, but it's far from the only one capable of rewriting the planet's future. There's another lurking in Indonesia, and its past eruptions make even Yellowstone's most destructive moments look tame. Lake Toba, a vast volcanic lake on the island of Sumatra, is the scar left behind by an eruption so massive that it reshaped the world's climate. Around 74,000 years ago, Toba erupted in the most powerful volcanic event in 25 million years, throwing 2,800 cubic kilometers of ash and lava into the atmosphere. That's 12% more than Yellowstone's last known eruption, and it was enough to trigger a global volcanic winter, a cooling event that may have nearly wiped out early human populations. Now, there are signs it may be stirring again. Reports of volcanic gases, rising temperatures, and increased ground activity suggest that Toba's dormant state might not last forever. Unlike Yellowstone, however, Toba sits in a densely populated region, home to over 50 million people. Worse still, the Indian Ocean is just 40 kilometers away, meaning that, alongside ash clouds and climate shifts, a catastrophic tsunami could be part of the devastation. Just pray that it won't happen. Number 14. The Helena Slump. When it comes to mega tsunamis, many focus on the Canary Islands' Cumbre Vieja volcano, which could send waves across the Atlantic. But the real danger might be in the Pacific. On Hawaii's Big Island, a massive portion of Kilauea's southern flank, known as the Helena Slump, is slowly slipping into the ocean. If it were to break off completely, an estimated 12,000 cubic kilometers of rock could plunge into the Pacific, displacing enough water to send a mega tsunami racing across the ocean. In just hours, waves could reach the US West Coast, Japan, and beyond, smashing into cities with almost no warning. This isn't just a theory. Evidence shows that 120,000 years ago, a similar event at Mauna Loa triggered a tsunami with a run-up height of over 400 meters, enough to obliterate any modern coastal city. Even in recent history, a smaller shift in 1975 triggered a destructive tsunami that reached California. Now, with constant seismic activity in the region, it's not a question of if, but when, the next big move happens. Number 13. The North Sea Tsunami. A tsunami in the North Sea? Well, it sounds unlikely, until you realize it's happened before. And with climate change accelerating, the threat is only growing day by day. Roughly 8,000 years ago, so it's pretty old, the collapse of glacial deposits off Norway's coast triggered a massive underwater landslide known as the Storegga Slide. The result? A tsunami over 20 meters high that slammed into the Shetland Islands, sent 10-meter waves into Norway, and battered Scotland's coast with 6-meter waves. Now, as polar ice melts at an unprecedented rate, rising sea levels are once again adding weight to unstable seabed deposits. If another landslide occurs, the modern consequences would be far worse. This time, coastal populations across Scotland, Norway, and even London would be in danger. And unlike countries on the Pacific Rim, these regions have no infrastructure or early warning systems to deal with a tsunami. Number 12. The Cascadian Big One. Off the coast of California, Oregon, Washington, and British Columbia, an unstoppable disaster is building up pressure beneath the ocean floor. The Cascadia subduction zone, a locked fault stretching over 1,000 kilometers, is one of the most deadly earthquake zones on Earth. Right now, the North American plate is compressing, held in place by the oceanic plate beneath it. But when that tension finally releases, it will trigger a magnitude 9 earthquake, causing massive coastal subsidence and up to 30 meters of horizontal displacement. If that sounds bad, it gets worse. The shaking will be followed by a devastating tsunami, likely far bigger than the one that struck Japan in 2011. Scientists have calculated that in the last 10,000 years, the Cascadia region has experienced 41 major earthquakes, occurring every 244 years on average. The last one, 315 years ago. That means the big one is not just overdue, it's likely imminent. And with over 7 million people living in the impact zone, the destruction could be unprecedented. Number 11. An extraterrestrial threat. Most people think of asteroids when they imagine space-related disasters, but a much more immediate threat is our own sun. Well, yup, that's 100% true. Every so often, the sun releases solar flares, immense bursts of electromagnetic energy that can send shock waves of charged particles toward Earth. Most of the time, we barely notice. But when they're big enough, they can disrupt satellites, knock out power grids, and throw entire nations into darkness. In 1921, a solar storm was strong enough to wipe out the U.S. telegraph system. If the same event happened today, it could disable GPS, bring down the internet, fry power stations, and cause chaos in global communications. Entire economies could grind to a halt overnight. The worst part? Solar storms follow an 11-year cycle. The last peak happened in 2014, and we were lucky. But the next peak is coming, and there's no guarantee we'll avoid the worst next time. Number 10. The sleeping giant of Naples. While Mount Vesuvius is infamous for wiping out Pompeii, few realize that a far bigger threat is simmering right next to it. The Campi Flegrei supervolcano, a vast underground cauldron stretching beneath Naples, is showing signs of waking up, and when it does, it could be catastrophic. Campi Flegrei has erupted before, most notably 39,000 years ago, when it spewed so much ash that it blanketed Europe and altered the global climate. Today, the area is home to over 3 million people, and recent ground inflation and increased seismic activity suggest magma is building beneath the surface. A full-scale eruption could unleash toxic gas clouds, blanket cities in volcanic debris, and trigger widespread evacuations. But the real nightmare? A large-scale event could mirror its ancient past, cooling the planet, crippling agriculture, and sending shockwaves across the global economy. And Naples? It would be wiped off the map. Number 9. The Peruvian megaquake. Peru's coast is a ticking seismic time bomb sitting along the Nazca subduction zone, one of the most dangerous earthquake-prone areas on the planet. The last time a truly massive earthquake struck this region was in 1746, and according to geologists, the fault is primed for another. A rupture along the Lima Trench could trigger a magnitude 9.0 plus earthquake, with violent shaking lasting minutes, not seconds. Skyscrapers and buildings in Lima, home to 10 million people, would collapse in an instant. Then comes the real terror, a mega tsunami, with waves up to 30 meters high, crashing into Peru's coastline and possibly reaching far beyond South America. The scariest part? This isn't speculation. Scientists have been pretty closely monitoring the buildup of seismic strain along the Peruvian coast and the stress levels, higher than they've been in centuries. Number 8. The Doomsday Glacier Collapse. Antarctica's Thwaites Glacier, also known as the Doomsday Glacier, is on the brink of disaster. This massive ice shelf, roughly the size of Florida, is already melting at an unstoppable rate, and when it fully collapses, it will single-handedly raise global sea levels by over 3 meters. Why does that matter? because just a 1-meter rise would be enough to submerge entire coastal cities like New York, Miami, and London. Now, imagine what happens when Thwaites finally gives way. Tens of millions of people would be forced to flee inland, entire nations could vanish, and extreme flooding events would become the new normal. Scientists say its collapse is inevitable, but the big question is when. Some estimates say within decades, others say sooner. But make no mistake, once it goes, there's no stopping the chain reaction that follows. Number 7. The African Rift Breakup. Africa is literally tearing apart, and one day it could split in two. The East African Rift, a massive fault system stretching thousands of kilometers, is slowly widening as tectonic forces pull the continent in opposite directions. The evidence? In 2005, a massive crack 60 kilometers long opened up in Ethiopia in just days, and similar rifts have been appearing along the fault ever since. Scientists believe that within the next 5 to 10 million years, the eastern part of Africa will completely break away, creating a new ocean in the process. But the real concern is now. The increased seismic activity along the rift means major earthquakes and volcanic eruptions could strike at any moment, especially in densely populated regions like Kenya, Ethiopia, and Tanzania. If a large enough rupture occurs, cities could be torn apart, and massive inland flooding could reshape Africa's geography overnight. All right, guys, now let's talk about number 6. The super typhoon that could drown an entire city. Hurricanes are already a massive problem, but one storm, in the right conditions, could be an extinction-level event for a major city. Experts believe that a Category 6 typhoon, yes, stronger than anything we've seen, could completely submerge cities like Manila, Bangkok, or even Shanghai. With climate change supercharging tropical storms, we're already seeing record-breaking typhoons each year. But what happens when a storm grows so massive that it doesn't weaken before landfall? Scientists warn that a future storm could reach wind speeds of over 350 kilometers per hour and bring rainfall so extreme that even modern drainage systems would be completely overwhelmed. Millions could be stranded or drowned. Entire regions could become uninhabitable swamps. And if it hit just the right place, it could wipe out a financial hub, crippling the global economy overnight. Number 5. The Arctic Methane Bomb. The Arctic permafrost is melting, and that's a bigger problem than anyone realizes. Locked beneath this frozen ground are trillions of tons of methane, a greenhouse gas 80 times more potent than carbon dioxide. If just a fraction of it escapes into the atmosphere, it could trigger runaway climate change. Scientists call it the methane time bomb, and recent studies show the fuse is already burning. Methane leaks have been detected in Siberia, Alaska, and Canada, and satellite images reveal giant craters forming where underground gas pockets have exploded. If enough of this methane is released, the Earth's temperature could rise by several degrees in just a few years. That would mean unprecedented droughts, extreme heat waves, and massive wildfires on a scale we've never seen before. Basically, it would turn the entire planet into a disaster zone. Number 4. The mega earthquake under Tokyo. Tokyo is one of the most earthquake-prepared cities on Earth. But here's the problem. It's due to a monster quake that no amount of engineering can fully protect against. Lying along 3 major tectonic plates, Tokyo sits on one of the most dangerous fault zones in the world. The last time a truly massive quake struck the region was in 1923, when a magnitude 7.9 earthquake leveled the city and killed over 140,000 people. Now, experts predict that Tokyo has a 70% chance of experiencing a magnitude 8+ quake within the next 30 years. When that happens, thousands of skyscrapers could collapse in seconds, fires could engulf entire districts, and millions of residents could be left without food, water, or electricity. And the worst part? Tokyo Bay could amplify the shaking, triggering massive landslides and possibly even a tsunami. Number 3. The next pandemic. COVID-19 was bad, but experts warn the next pandemic could be far worse. Well, if you look around the world, it's happening. Scientists have identified thousands of unknown viruses in animals, many of which could jump to humans at any moment. The biggest concern? Zoonotic spillover, when a virus mutates and spreads from animals to people. This is exactly how diseases like Ebola, SARS, and even COVID-19 emerged. But the nightmare scenario? A virus with the deadliness of Ebola, the contagiousness of measles, and complete resistance to modern medicine. Right now, researchers are closely watching bird flu strains, H5N1 and H5N8, the Nipah virus, and even resurrected prehistoric viruses found in melting permafrost. And let's not forget antibiotic-resistant superbugs, which could turn even a minor infection into a death sentence. The global population is larger and more connected than ever, meaning when the next pandemic hits, it could spread faster and be deadlier than anything we've ever seen. Number 2. Asteroids. You might think NASA has asteroid threats under control, but recent discoveries suggest we're still in the dark about many Earth-threatening space rocks. In 2022, astronomers spotted 2022 AP7, a 1.5-kilometer-wide asteroid lurking in Earth's blind spot, the region of space hidden by the sun. If an asteroid like this were to hit, it could wipe out an entire continent and send Earth into climate chaos. Then there's 99,942 Apophis, which will make a terrifyingly close flyby in 2029. Scientists originally feared it could impact Earth, and while the risk has been downgraded, asteroids can still be unpredictable. A small deviation in orbit, and suddenly, we're in the danger zone. NASA's DART mission successfully altered an asteroid's path in 2022, proving deflection is possible, but here's the catch. We need years of advance warning. If we detect a killer asteroid too late, there won't be time to stop it. Number 1. The ocean's hidden threat. We've seen volcanoes erupt on land, but what happens when one explodes under the ocean? The answer? A mega tsunami that could devastate entire coastlines within hours. The Hunga Tonga Hunga Ha'apai eruption in 2022 was a terrifying preview. The explosion was so powerful it sent shockwaves around the world, and if the volcano had been in shallower water, it could have generated a tsunami capable of flattening entire coastal cities. The real concern? We have no idea how many of these volcanoes are waiting to blow. The Pacific Ocean is littered with underwater supervolcanoes, and some, like the Kikai caldera near Japan, are showing signs of activity. If one of these erupts with full force, it could send a 100-meter-high tsunami racing toward Japan, Southeast Asia, and even the US West Coast. We've mapped the moon better than the ocean floor, meaning the next big eruption could be brewing right now, and we wouldn't even know it. If you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you soon.